Well, it all started for me when I was 14. Um, I had a dirt bike and was way too big for me. And I was on a dirt road going way too fast and came around the corner and I hit a car. And I broke my leg, broke my arm, I broke my collarbone, I broke all my fingers on my left hand, broke my foot and 3 toes. At 14, because I was hurt so bad and pins in my legs, I got put on Oxycontin 40s. My dad worked out of town, was gone all the time, ran in a motorcycle gang, and was just never really there. My mom was a hairdresser, worked 80 hours a week. So, me being lamed up at the house by myself, I prescribed myself, or dosed myself, my own medication. That's what started my addiction.
I started cigarettes at the age 9. When I was 13, my mom was working nights, and me and my sister were 13 months apart, so that's when we started smoking pot and drinking. I ended up getting raped the first time I ever got drunk by 2 guys. My mom went to Florida and left me behind at the age of 15, so at the age of 15, if it weren't for my sister and her boyfriend, I wouldn't have had a place to go. By the time I was 17, my mom was still in Florida, and I got my license, my first apartment, emancipated. I've always had mental health issues, bipolar, but I didn't get diagnosed until later on. So that was always a struggle to fit in or to keep friends being bipolar.
So my addiction began with occasional pill use in my teenage years, and then it became full-blown before I hit 20. I was addicted to opiates and couldn't stop. I started with a prescription, and then that was, I was also sneaking them from like my friends' parents. They knew that their parents had a prescription of opiates, so we'd steal them from them, and they didn't know. And eventually I started buying them, and whenever I could get my hands on them, and it turned into being addicted full time and got worse and worse.
Well, back in 2014, I was working and going to school to meet TANF Aspire requirements. My husband was at home watching the kids, and I thought he was fine, and I didn't realize that he was battling with alcoholism. For 2 years and 2 weeks, I fought to get my family back home. And I learned about what alcoholism was. My husband worked on sobriety. And I didn't understand what alcoholism was in the beginning or the signs of it. You know, when he said 1 or 2 beers, I believed him. I didn't know there was actually really more. 1 or 2 beers really means more. And the one thing is, alcoholism doesn't affect just the person that's using it, affects the whole family. It tore my family apart.
So there I am, 16, with a full-blown addiction. So I left home, started living with a bunch of 21, 22, 23-year-old people on Center Street. Within 6 months, I had dropped out of school, started washing dishes at the Roadhouse to supply my habit, sleeping on a floor. So I thought I'd do like a location change and I'd get out of the area, but what I didn't realize is that just because you leave the area, you still bring the problem with you. 17, 18 years old, I'm stealing money from my grandparents to get high. Knew I really had a problem at this point. I had a girl that was pregnant and callous, and I couldn't even get out of bed unless I had something sitting right there beside me. So the day I turned 18, I went to the methadone clinic. 2 weeks of being at the methadone clinic on 80 milligrams, I did a bunch of Klonopin. I partied all night long, had a good time, cleaned up afterwards, went to sleep, woke up 47 days later in Eastern Maine Medical Center. It had gotten to the point where the doctors were actually talking to my mom about pulling the plug and bracing herself that I wasn't going to come out of it. My mother literally talked to my friends about whether I wanted to be buried or cremated. I don't remember much about coming out of the coma, but I do remember looking at my mother. And I didn't even recognize her. She had lost probably 20 pounds. I could tell she hadn't showered in God knows how long. And she was balled up in a chair, sleeping. Well, I wasn't ready. After literally almost dying, I go back out and I start using. And the disease of addiction is a progressive disease. When you go back out hard. So now I'm 20 years old and I'm starting to shoot up. Shoot up whatever I can. Whatever I can get my hands on. But I did get picked up for stealing food from Walmart to feed my family because I would rather spend my money on drugs and steal food.
I had infection. They didn't know where, how, or why. And that's when I started taking opiates. They put me on a prescription. Started with the pills, but by then I was just so depressed and didn't care. My sister was selling heroin and cocaine, and for about 6 months I fought it. If I thought you had a needle, I'd kick you out of my house. And the guy that I met, he had done needles before, but at the time, for about 6 months, I kept saying no and kicking people out. But then I just gave up and said, go ahead. And all it took was that one shot. And I was addicted to coke and heroin, pills, anything I could get my hands on. We did that for about 8 months, and he got abusive, very abusive. The cops would come. The police asked me why I was with controlling men, and I didn't say nothing, and my ex-husband's like, I'm not controlling, and they're like, look at you, you're not even letting her talk. But I would send him away. They'd come a few times, and they would call the cops or whatever when he was abusing me. And I guess at the end of it, I just felt like that's what I could get and that's what I deserved. I got into it for about 1.5 years. A lot of my friends didn't recognize me. I looked like a skeleton. It was worse than before. I was still out of control on the drugs, and I carried on. I didn't stop. I robbed a 30 dealer. I lost everything from there. I smashed my Solera into a telephone pole. My friend says, you can't do this and drive. I said, I got a high tolerance. Next thing I know, we're in a telephone pole. There goes my $10,000 car because I had no insurance. I was too busy buying drugs. Yeah, there's repercussions that I can never take back. And never goes away. I used to be that one that judged. And now, I feel like it's a struggle. When people see tattoos and say you've been to jail, they look at you different. They're not willing to give you a job or a chance. getting into a place, filling out applications, and they look at your background, they see drugs or been to prison, do you think they want to rent to you or hire you? No. I was at the bottom of the barrel. I lost my home, I lost my car, I lost my license, lost my kids, I went to prison. Yeah, I lost it all.
And now my kids are not in my custody because I got wrapped up in a bad boyfriend. I broke my standards of boyfriends. I said I'd never date someone who used needles. Ended up doing that anyways. And he got finally talked me into using needles. Never wanted to use a needle, scared to death of them. And I used to have a pillow over my head while he injected me. And then one day he killed me. Literally, he made me overdose. He gave me way more than the normal person should have. And that lost my kids because he had to call 911 because I was literally dead. I woke up with 6 EMTs around me, and all I could think of was, where's my daughter and my son? And my daughter had woke up while he was freaking out and panicking, calling 911. But she's seen a lot for her age. You know, she saw me on the floor dead. And luckily the paramedics brought me back to life. But no child should have to see their mother dead on the floor because of a drug addiction. So I ended up getting worse and started using heroin. There was a point where I didn't feel like I would ever get my kids back. I thought that my addiction was just the only thing that I had. And it was basically just self-medicating because I was so stressed out.
I mean, in 2014, I was going through crisis already as it is. I lost my dad, I lost my stepmom, my husband lost his mom, and I lost a few friends, all to death, all in a few month period during the summer. And in the middle of all that, my kids were taken. It was like, felt like everything was turned right upside down. I was at the point where I felt hopeless. I wanted to kill myself. My counselor was actually worried about me. Yeah, when you have DHS in your lives or your kids being taken, yeah, of course you're judged. Of course you're judged. They think you're an awful parent. They don't understand the story. It's like, yeah, DHS took your kids. And then people just get too personal asking questions, and everything is like, you don't want to talk about it because it's just embarrassing.
But when you have two addicts in the house and you're trying to raise a child, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Parenting class, 17 weeks, 2 sessions a week for an hour and a half. And yeah, at first that seemed like a lot, but the stuff that I learned, like boundaries, communication, child safety awareness, how to take time for myself so I can be there for him. These are all little things that you don't really think about, but when you sit down and you talk about it like that, like I learned so much from this class. And not only that, like I didn't even graduate high school. Like 28 years old, and I got handed a certificate of completion. That was like I completed something. Like I saw it through. I saw the whole thing through. I started it and I finished it and I did it. I just really want my kids. I obviously want better for them than what I had, but I'm also going to teach them that whatever you set your mind to is possible. Really, my biggest thing was learning to love myself and really be kind of at peace with myself, being able to look in the mirror and be happy with who's standing there. If you don't love yourself, you're not going to be able to be there or love somebody else.
I see me going back to school and eventually being somebody, buying a house. And I truly see that. A year and a half ago, I probably would have thought I was going to prison. I'd get so depressed or so down on myself and guilt-ridden, I would do dope just to cover that up, to get rid of the guilt feeling and the hurt from being away from my kids. And I didn't want him. I just wanted to be numb. Yeah, I found myself again. I was, pretty depressed a lot. Now, not so much. And I am climbing up the ladder, but little at a time. I want it yesterday. I want instant gratification, but that's not possible. So we'll just take one day at a time.
But it's hard to be in the clinic and looked at like you're still using. Getting the right services was a huge struggle. People just think because you're addicted, you're a junkie, or you're pretty much useless. You're not a person almost. It's like you're the scum of the earth. They say you have an addictive gene, and I hope that they don't ever become addicted to anything, and I'm going to fight my butt off so that doesn't happen. It happened to me, and I would hate to see my child go through what I've been through. People usually try to keep the fact that they're addicted a secret because they're worried about what everybody's going to think about them. They're worried about the judgment factors and stuff. It's a scary thing to be labeled an addict. Before, when I was addicted, I almost knew that I shouldn't have my kids back until I was ready.
And I'm slowly learning to trust my husband again after going through all the alcoholism. And just leaving the kids with him extended period of time, I still worry. It's there, right there in my mind. I don't drink, smoke, or do any drugs. I don't do anything. And I was doing what I could to support my family. But I was the one that was also affected by it. The alcohol, drugs, whatever it is, would destroy a family. And it's like, before I thought, I didn't understand, like, that alcoholism affects the whole family. For the longest time, I didn't talk to anybody about it. And then I did start talking to people about it. And then there was people that were coming forward and telling similar stories. People who got their kids back.
For almost a year now, I have 11 months and 19 days clean. And that only happens one day at a time. One of the biggest things, being an addict is someone's always watching you, or someone's always looking at you. The stereotype, you know what I mean? It's real. And so it's hard to get back into the community and to feel comfortable walking into a place and filling out an application, to even going and buying clothes and taking a shower and doing those things again. It takes time. It's not going to happen over a week or two. Getting rid of that tag, that drug user or, junkie or whatever word that's placed on you, during your addiction, that's something that is very, very hard to deal with. The only way you could truly fix that is through time and proof. People will see you as a stronger person for being there and coming back than just being there and staying there.
Addiction is real. It's a disease. You may judge the guy beside you because he's having a rough one in the homeless shelter getting drunk. I was that one, trust me. But now I think twice about it, and I might offer him to go to AA, or if he needs a ride, or help. For a long time I gave up hope because You know, if I didn't have my kids, I didn't want to live. But there is hope. There is hope. There's light at the end of the tunnel. Even when it gets dark and gloomy, there's help out there. Just, you got to find the right people. You got to change your people, places, and things.
And you need to hate the addiction, not the addict. Really. It's a hard stigma to get through. It makes you not want to ask for help because you have to admit that you're the addicted person that everybody hates. And I just would recommend for parents, just quit. Don't think that you're going to use again because you're not going to keep your kids. It'll happen again. When it's time, the hardest thing to do is ask for help and admitting to loved ones that you even have a problem to begin with. That's very hard because you're worried about what they'll think about you. But people can recover. They aren't any less of a person because they've had an addiction. You really have to want it for yourself and better your life, or you're probably not going to succeed.
Don't give up. Keep fighting for your children. Don't give up, even when it seems hopeless. All I can say is focus on your family. You're getting your children home. Work on sobriety. Cut off the people that pull you into that lifestyle and surround yourself with positive people. And just keep on going, even when it seems hopeless. Just keep on going. Don't give up. I mean, if you give up, that's when you lose everything. That's when you lose everything.